Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the ArtaCast number 3. The third episode is out. We were all waiting for it. Now it's time. And we have a lot of discuss. We have so much to discuss because the first week of the. It's not a new set, is out, but the cards are revealed for a week now, and we were all brewing with proxies, some new decks and spices, and we are much we are much wiser now than last week. At least we hope to be. And um, yeah, there's a lot to discuss. LD, how was your week? Did you test a lot? And what was your impression of the first week of the new meta game, you could say?
My week's been amazing. I've had a really good time playing with all the new cards. Specifically been focused around what I see as I guess, prominent tempo decks at the moment in green purple, obviously, but also some purple steel, also some green steel a little lower to the ground. The set feels great. I'm sure we'll talk about specifics, but loads of new cards are feeling fantastic. Early testing has been really encouraging, and I don't want to speak too soon, but it
Mhm.
feels like a good time to be a green purple fan. Do you agree?
Maybe, yeah. Well, my impression was a lot of aggro. I think that's always the case when a new set comes out.
Yeah.
People are trying to punish people, trying weird strategies or combos with just aggro strategies. And maybe it's speaking too soon, but I think what can be said is that aggro or aggressive strategies or tempo aggressive strategies got objectively power creeps or just improvements,
Yeah.
while control decks still try to figure out what of the new cards could be good enough, or yeah, could maybe lead them to not make the cut for many of the new cards. But aggro in general got some really auto includes power spikes that should maybe lead into the first meta game where we, or the first set where we have maybe some really high viable aggro decks, hopefully, or tempo decks. I don't know what's your feeling is about that topic.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think that, like you say, the cards that the aggro decks and the tempo decks got are really easy to include. A lot of them feel like auto includes, and we'll talk about some of them in specifics very shortly. But the control, I feel like I've seen this pattern before, right? Maybe not with the same level of new tools, but I've definitely felt this way about more aggressively slanted decks at this point in the set cycle, where I think, okay, they're going to break through. Specifically, you'll probably remember feeling multiple times like looking at the metagame at this point just prior to release and thinking, "Oh, red purple is dead." Like I feel like I've thought
Yeah.
thought that so I've thought that maybe 5 times, and then it's just not. Actually, the control decks always look like they're on the back foot because they are reactive strategies and they need to know what they're reacting
Mm-hmm.
to. So you have some time before the metagame settles, but the different thing this time is that the power level, the power distribution in the set feels like it supports aggro decks and tempo decks a bit better than some of these control things. So I think maybe this time's different. Maybe we don't see that short-term spike. Maybe the aggro decks hold on and we end up with quite a flat metagame where lots of things are viable again. I'd certainly hope so. But yeah, I want it to not be a control heavy meta this set, but past experience has showed me that with
Yeah,
enough time to react,
yeah,
they can get their heads around it.
yeah. And honestly, the decks that were present in set 5 are possibly not too bad right now. I mean, red blue is still the strategy in itself, red blue and green steel or something, is not completely gone and will be probably viable in some extent. Um, but at least they got, like we mentioned it now, yeah, no clearly power creep like some macro strategies. I mean, we got some clear replacements for
Yeah,
other cards that are objectively better, and that's not something that many control strategies got. Maybe you could say sale for the Ezreal Sea is a strict replacement for I don't know, for one charm or something. What's clearly better, but then it's hard to find that cards that are auto includes for them. So yeah, let's be excited. What's ahead? I think there are some cards I want to talk with you about, or
yeah.
that I think are interesting. The first standout for me while testing it, and I didn't expect it to be that good, but it is that good, is Genie, the new forecast
Yeah.
Genie. I think you will agree that this card is absolutely nuts, and I didn't I didn't expect it to be, because it seemed so, I don't know, not very. It seemed okay, but it seemed not crazy powerful like it is. The tempo of this card is just amazing, especially against steel. And yeah, I don't know what you think about this card.
Yeah, I've been absolutely loving it. So the biggest problem with this Genie is working out the numbers in which you play Rabbit
Mm,
alongside it, right? Which is that you don't want a deck full of uninkable 4 drops. So I did start off by testing 4 Genies alongside 4 Rabbits and just, let's play as many good things that replace themselves as we can. And I ended up going down on Rabbits a little bit because, yeah, Genie just gets the job done in these more aggressively curved decks, and yeah, way puts on way more pressure. You're happy to do it a lot more. And because I'm like a huge Kit Cloud Kicker fan. Some people, you know, make calls to cut Kit every now and again. I never want to do it. Um, Specifically Genie in the lines with Kit, I really love because Kit was our stopgap for hindering these Diablo decks.
mm-hmm.
It's not an answer, but it puts it off, right? We bounce the Diablo. As long as there's no cove, we bounce the Diablo on turn 4. It's on turn 3, sorry, with our kit. If you play a Genie on 4, then you've bounced the Diablo. They've replayed it again ready because they've not been able to play it exerted. You play your Genie, get your draw in. The Diablo doesn't see the draw. Then they can't exert the Diablo because you have a Genie and it checks the Diablo. And that line now is not a stopgap, it's an actual answer. It freezes their Diablo lines unless they have removal for that. So these are sort of things I didn't see first, but when you actually play with them, you realize like
Yeah,
how
yeah,
much Genie's bringing to the table.
yeah, yeah. And I didn't expect it a week ago that it replaces Rabbit. I would say you're stupid when you replace Rabbit by Genie, but I think if you play a mirror match or something, or even if you play against Red Purple or something with Genie, and they play Genie on 4, and you play a Rabbit, that feels so bad, because it's such a tempo loss. If they play Genie and you play Rabbit,
Yeah,
it's so bad. And especially Rabbit is a card that got way worse in this set. I think it's not too far that the card in itself gets power creeped out of the game. I think because it's you the spots where you play it and you are happy are much rarer, and the tempo, at least the tempo right now, is so crazy high in nearly any deck that the turn off by playing a rabbit was nearly a uh, it's nearly you do nothing. You could say if you play a rabbit,
yeah,
you can't afford that often, and that's yeah, a problem for the card.
yeah, totally. Like you say, it's too powerful in a vacuum to be considered. We're not saying this card isn't playable, but the tide is turning on this, and the amount of spaces where you can just play it, they're much harder to find. I had a really interesting moment in one of my test games with one of our friends this week where I ended up getting sort of completely run over by them. and said, "Ah, yeah, GG. What could I do? I drew 3 rabbits." And normally, drawing 3 rabbits in the past was like
Yeah.
that was an unlosable game, but in this circumstance, it was the exact reason why I lost and just couldn't get anything going. Couldn't establish enough of a board or put together a strong enough seeming board. There was nothing to be done there.
I had some weird games with someone reminded me a lot of a Minnie Mouse Surfer of that three where my opponent plays a Genie on 4, I play Genie on 4, they play another Genie on 5, I play another Genie on 5, I trade with my both Genies their Genie, but I get so much tempo loss because I have to trade all the time. That's exactly like Mini Surfer was in set 2, where you everything
got
did revolving around removing the Minnie Mouses, and yeah.
Yeah, and I've already been discovering the kind of mind games that happen with, okay, I play my Genie first. You play your Genie second. Now when it comes back to my turn, do I quest?
Cause the crab,
Knowing that you're going, yeah, Crab and Elsa. So
and Elsa, yeah.
a Genie attacking an opposite Genie. They both were played on each player's turn 4. Is exactly the curve into turn 5 Elsa to exert something, and then you finish off their Genie, leaving yours alive.
This is
the kind
weird.
of metagame we're going into. We could end up in a sort of Genie versus Genie world where, you know, certainly that's been what a lot of my testing has looked like, yeah.
That could also lead to some weird tech decisions, like, I don't know, like how's the 5-cost called? The 5/4/4 evasive guy? Don Carnage or something.
Don Carnage, yeah.
So some weird tech choices like Peter Pan Shadowfinder in the past or something. The Peter Pan Shadow in the past, where you have to adapt with some weird tech choices. I don't know if we are there, but sometimes some games feel like that. The Amethyst mirror matches feel a lot like that.
Yeah, totally.
But if you want to play Amethyst, please play Genie. You will be not disappointed by him. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some other cards. I think most of the cards I listed here are overperformed. Nah, not everything, but Go-Go. Let's talk about Go-Go. Go-Go is weird. I played the green purple also a lot, and it's surprisingly one of my most inked cards, because you often don't play it on turn 2 because we have Banzai or we have Ursula or something. That's most of the time better on turn 2. It's our emergency turn 2, you could say, if we don't have something else.
Yes.
But just the threat that this card provides by existing in your deck is for your opponent very annoying. And it didn't disappoint me. But to be honest, I thought we get often more out of her sometimes. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's a good card, and it won't. It's a 4-off in I think in any aggressive green deck, but could be a bit. Yeah.
I think you've just said it really, really well, which is that I went in with the expectation the first time playing green purple with 4 Go-Gos, thinking, right, I'm gonna be gaining 4 pretty often here. I know how to do it. I hit something with my goat, and then I go it, and I end the game. That has not been happening very often. It's harder to set up than you might think, and that does not mean the card is bad at all. It is a phenomenally powerful card, and it's a super good addition to the deck, and it does its best work when it's not even in play or in your hand. It's the burden that it puts on your opponent's decision making, and that is a huge plus point, right? Like, if we have a card that essentially warps how our opponent plays, we don't even need to draw it to have that effect happen. Our opponents have to play around it. They must respect it, or they will lose the game to it. So for me, it's an auto include for that. I don't know if you need 4 of them. I'm happy to play 4, but yeah, I'm certainly not mad at having 4 of them in my deck. It's, like I say, a phenomenally powerful card. But Yeah, I don't know if you might need as many as that because, like you say,
That's reasonable, yeah.
it was my last choice. It was my last choice 2-drop. It's really only an emergency 2-drop when you're doing that. You very rarely want to do that unless you're trying to check a Diablo or something. Um, and outside of that, yeah, didn't pull off a huge amount of finishes with it, but just watching the way that my control opponents had
Mm-hmm.
to respect it to not lose the game, and watching them sweat a bit made me think, yeah, this card does heavy work just by existing.
I
If
had
you want to
one,
go
yeah.
really deep, just don't play them at all. Then you get to play 60 cards, and your opponent still has to assume you play them. That is too far, but like it's
Yeah.
something to consider. The fact that this card exists is like,
I
yeah,
had some
it
boards where
warps
my
patterns.
where my opponent had to be prep their own board. It was really funny. I had
Yeah,
nothing and they be prepped their own Maui. That's
yeah.
just weird.
Yes, I had a few of those as well.
Because I bounced my go and then yeah, they had to be prep. That was very funny. Yeah, it's powerful, and if you play this card 4 times, you won't do anything wrong. Um, but maybe you don't need four. That's possibly true, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially if you have a curve where green is very powerful with cards like Ursula or Morph or Banzai or something. There's a lot to consider for that slot. So maybe you just play 3 or 2. It's also fine.
yeah. I think the scenarios where you want to play it on turn 2, there are fewer scenarios for that than any of the other 2-drops, right?
Yeah, that's
Some
true. Yeah.
matchups you want to start getting bouncing Ursula online as early as possible. Some you want to deploy a Banzai because you're just looking to race before they ramp up or
Mm.
deploy a board of their own. Yeah, the reasons to play Go on turn 2 are, yeah, few and far between. So she ends up getting inked quite a lot. But like you say, definitely not a reason to not play the card. It's really, really good.
Yeah. The other card, um, what I absolutely, I think after Genie is my favorite, maybe of the first week, is Calhoun. This card is especially against the
Mm,
decks that I played was a nightmare. I playtested green, purple, red, purple, and green steel a bit. And
yep.
against all those 3 decks, this card is just nuts. It's so painful. Even if you play Murfolk or something, and then they play Calhoun, you don't know what to do. Do you quest or not? Or it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's also not easy to check this card. You need 3 strength. Um, Therefore, cards like Banzai and so are very good. But yeah, it's just a very powerful. It's a 2-drop. I know. I mean, what do you want more out of a 2-drop? I think if you play Steel and you play some aggressive shell, it's a 4 for me. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Really, really efficient card. Um, Significantly harder to remove profitably than it looks. I think that a few people would maybe think, okay, well, this still sort of just gets foxed, doesn't it? But like, if they're
Mm,
forced to fox it, that's a
yeah,
good trade for
yeah,
you.
yeah. That's
If you're 2-drop, like they removed a 2-drop by playing a 3-drop that they also had to bounce something for, so they've lost tempo and lost sort of a relative ink advantage. Um, you're really happy. Like nothing on rate really trades that well with this, and even when it does, like you get to choose when the trades are open. You don't have to go for these things, and it's almost always gaining 4 law in my experience. It's a can freeze the board on turn 2 against aggressive decks. Yeah, really, really efficient card for purple steel specifically, I think.
it doesn't die to storm. That's also very
Yeah.
powerful. It's really 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 good. I can see a downside of the card, to be honest. I nearly in any deck. I mean, if you play I mean, you have probably not the uninkable slots for this card, but if you are a defensive deck, a stall deck, it's also very good. It's a resist
Mm,
3 strength character that can trade everything till turn 4 probably. So yeah, it's like a Smee in that
yeah.
in that regard, but probably in slower decks the Smee is still better because of just the inkable thing. But yeah, very powerful. I think this will see a lot of play. Would be
Yeah. It's
surprised if not.
yeah,
Yeah,
super good card. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have something? Um,
I'm not sure whether to call this an overperformer or an underperformer, but I want to talk about the Amethyst one cost Diablo.
mm-hmm.
It's a card that I've played a ton with, and it's good, but maybe not in the ways I thought. In my mind, I thought, okay, this is a one drop that I play on turn one, and I get to quest with it infinitely, and nobody will ever want to trade with it. They do trade with it pretty
Yeah.
frequently, as it turns out, which maybe a player other than me might have realized that that's just the case, and so you just lose it quite a lot. But the effect, being able to have this one drop that replaces itself and maybe gets one or two quests in, or you just sits back until it gets crabbed on turn three. Having that exchange of your turn three, your one drop Diablo gets crabbed, trades up with their two drop, um, and or just I don't know. The situations where it hits a two drop there are kind of rare, but tries to trade up or just gets a good trade in, plus draws a card. It's super efficient. And this feels great as a late game draw when you've got a nice tempo advantage, your opponent's been forced to sweep the board in some way, and then you just kind of deploy this plus a genie. Well, you're
Yeah.
you're in a great spot. It's a 0-1, you wouldn't think it feels great as a late draw, but often if you
Mm-hmm.
push the game in the direction you want, where your opponent's having to remove everything you play, it feels really good. So yeah, worse
I
than I thought on turn one, better later.
I just wanted to say the same. Yeah, it's the best one drop in the game that's not in turn one. I
Mm,
think, or nearly the best one drop in the game that's not played on turn one because, yeah, it's never a risk to play it later in the game. We have all these board stances where you think, oh, if now comes the board wipe, then I don't know. But you can always play this, and it's very powerful.
mm,
It's weird when I say, ha ha ha, I knew it, but I thought it would be worse than we think because if my opponent plays, yeah, I thought the situations happen, and I think because everyone was very high on the Diablo, and I thought, it's good, but I don't know. I could see a lot of situations where you feel bad about it. If you play against an aggressive deck and they open with an aggressive quester, let it be Maleficent or Murphy or something, it's the worst one drop in the game
yeah,
that you can have. And I'm always um, careful about cards. Sometimes I maybe are too focused about it, but I'm always careful about cards that are not good on the draw. And Diablo
yes,
can be not good on the draw in a lot of situations, and that's always a bit scary for me because on the draw you want other cards. You even be more happy about a broom most of the time, probably.
yeah, yeah. There
Depends on the
was there was a
matchup.
game that
Uh,
there was a game that we played against each other where you were playing red purple with Diablo in it, and I was playing green purple, and you played a Diablo on turn one, and I played a Merfolk,
yeah,
and it was like the perfect example that makes you realize, wow, I really need my one drops to have one strength.
yeah,
Like red purple specifically needs that.
yeah.
Um, these little dorks that just replace themselves and sit around questing often are on trading duty, and it's a serious downside to not be able to do that. To like a broom, like you say, it checks Lilos, Maleficents, Merfolks, those sorts of things. That's a really important job that card's doing, and Diablo notably needs a crab to do anything like that.
Also, your Murphy thought in that spot, I am the most powerful card in the game.
Yeah, well, it is.
Challenge
Merfolk is the
me,
most powerful
challenge
card in the
me.
game.
Discard a card, and then I survive. No,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good. It's good, but it has some
yeah,
downsides, and I think you will not always auto include this 4 times in every purple deck.
yeah,
In aggressive
for
shells,
sure.
maybe, but in the slower decks, your one drops have a different purpose most of the time.
Yes.
Yeah. One other card I wanted to talk about, what I also think is less good than people say, is the Moana, the one drop Moana. I think it's not a bad card. It's a good card. I don't want to say this card is bad, but again, I think it's a real downside. The effect of the card. I mean,
Mm,
most of the time you won't play, and with when you play captains, this card is absolutely strong. But I saw many decks that don't play any captains at all. And then it's weird. It's just weird. Again, on the draw problem, your opponent can do what they like, and again nearly the same downsides than Diablo has in that spot, because I can also play the Merfolk and you can't do anything. And it's good for hyper aggressive strategies again, but has its downsides. And because I saw some posts that said, "Oh, it's auto include 4 times in red decks," and I don't see it. I saw even people say, "Oh, red blue." What do you do with this card in red blue? You do nothing with this. You maybe get 2 quests out of this or 3, and then I don't see it.
I don't know.
It's a bit worse than the community says, I would say.
I've seen the card do some quite good things, but it's been in these specific like piratey style decks, which as a note aren't that bad. There are some pretty good cards in those decks. It's not like a free roll when someone plays these things. And when you've got that Moana at its best in a shell that's built to support it, or that it just nicely slots into, is of course wildly good. But you can't just drop 4 of them in red purple and hope to achieve everything, can you? It's not quite as strong as it looks in that situation.
What really surprised me was the Pluto. I didn't have it on my radar.
The
4-drop Steel Pluto. That's a crazy good card. Oh my gosh. You can compare this a lot to Lawrence, because it has the same effect, but it's just a bit thicker and a bit more expensive, and it's really, really annoying. It's a 5/5 for 4. I mean, what can you complain about that? And Bodyguard, it's really annoying, especially when you're ahead. It's really, 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 really painful to play against this card. I mean, if your opponent is ahead and plays this, then you have really tough time to come back from a Pluto play on turn 4.
Yeah, I think that Brelin DeCandio must have released his first pass at Amber Steel because lots of people that I know have been playing that and smashing me with Pluto. The card is super good. I barely gave it a second look when it was spoiled, and I have no idea why. I think I probably didn't read it because it's so good. The first time that someone played it against me, a sort of jaw hit the floor moment of, whoa, this thing is seriously hard to get through. If you needed any more reasons to be playing crabs and that sort of thing at the moment, there you go.
I think 4 crabs are in the meta game that I see now. It's absolutely must. So this is also something that we'll see a lot of play, I think, Pluto, especially in Steel Song. Or what do you want more? Very powerful. What I think is more like we said last week, I think, is Oswald. It's a very powerful effect, but I don't see the decks right now. I saw some people playtesting it, and I wasn't convinced by it. I don't know. I don't see it right now. I'm always happy if they don't ramp on turn 2, and then they do Fishbone on turn 3 and maybe get a lucky dime from it. But that's not too scary at all. I mean, if they ramp on turn 2, that's way scarier for me most of the time. I don't know how you feel about it.
Agree. Completely agree. I played against some people testing it out, and notably one of them did put a free dime into play off the Oswald. I think probably it wasn't right away. I think it was turn 4, and still managed to lose the game. So my takeaway was kind of, well, you've just done the sort of over the top powerful thing. This is like the best case example for this card. A lot of the time, actually, you're better off flipping a Porpsicle. But the big ticket flashy thing everyone wants to do is flip a dime, isn't it? And then, well, actually, when you've just got an Oswald sitting in play, what are you going to do? Spend 2 ink every turn to gain 1 off your dime that you put into play early. Like, it's just, I don't know. When I've seen it, I've just thought, like, you'd be so ahead if that was a cheater.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or even a typo.
Yeah.
To some regard. I mean,
Yeah.
the ramp turn 2 is the most scary thing that they can do most of the time for many decks.
Yeah.
So that was the first problem I saw with this card, but it seems to be that. But I don't say it could be, it could still be there that we see some good Oswald decks still if they figure out how to use it best or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll see something of this. But
I think for me, the sort of takeaway is it's obviously not a bad card. It can do some really powerful things, and you've got in a lot of these decks, you've got a reasonable chance, even if it's just a flip, a Porpsicle, or Fortress Sphere, which is a great effect to happen when you just ink, which you're going to do anyway. But I still can't get my head around how either blue red or blue steel is finding room for this. Like both decks are heavy on uninkables that are important sort of must plays. I don't see how they're squeezing this in. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It is uninkable, right? I'm not just saying
he's uninkable.
Yeah.
Card is powerful,
not
but
sure
still
on it.
needs to find its home.
Yeah.
The same for Bend to My Will. I think the secret is out now for the people that the game didn't crush because of this card existing. It's no serious auto win play line if you play this on turn 4. There are so many counterplays for this that this is not the go-to strategy that will crush everyone, especially if your opponent plays some aggressive. They don't need more than 3 characters on board to kill you. So yeah, it's not. It seems. I think green blue is a viable deck. I think there will be some guys that will figure it out. But I think Bend to My Will is not the super one-sided strategy the deck plays. I mean, there are some other powerful things like Clarable. I mean, ramping up to Clarable is a powerful thing because you lose your hand and you refill it. I mean, that's powerful. And then you can Bend to My Will and some. But I think in most decks, you could maybe see this card maybe as a 1 or 2 of just to annoy people or catch them off guard or something. If you're not super fast green deck, but it's not super powerful, the card. It's not super great, but it could see play.
It's definitely at its best as a surprise, isn't it? Which is that lots of people were talking about the fact that you can play this on turn 4, and a lot of the enablers for that, whether it was Iago or Starlight Vial, it's like we said last week, it's really telegraphed. And you can just empty your hand, can't you? You see an Iago, you know what to do. Get the cards in play, especially if they draw cards themselves. Like my first pass at Green Purple last week, pretty much everything drew a card. And so I just okay, followers, Diablo, Cusco, let's get a rabbit in play and a genie, why not? Maybe they get you for 1 or 2 cards and then you just quest with your stuff, and as they pick it off slowly while losing, you fill your hand back up, and it's what do they do in that situation? It's a little too obvious at the moment because everyone's aware. There's a world where you end up getting caught out by this every now and again, and it's probably going to be by decks that just run it as a 1 or 2 of and just get you sometimes.
I think it in an open deck list could be kind of powerful. I think if you play this as a one-off, if you play this in open deck lists in a tournament or so, and your opponent knows you play this, it leads to some really scary decision making maybe by them to overextend then. And I think it's not a bad card, but it's not the strategy around this card is the game breaking thing. Okay, so one last card, because I want to talk a lot about our brews, but one last card I want to talk about is Maui. I think that Maui maybe has the most expectations for many people, or most people were interested to playtest this. Me as well, and I playtested this card a lot, and I'm still not sure how to feel about it. I had situations where this card is exactly doing what I wanted it to do, and I had situations where I would have liked it to be another card, and that's a weird scenario where I don't know how I evaluate this card. I played it mainly in red purple with some synergy with Peter Pan and Elsa and so. And against green decks, it's really good. Maui. Against green decks, it's very powerful. Against all, they have not much removal, and it freezes often the board. But it still hurts that he doesn't do immediately something when he hits the board. That's kind of scary for a 6-drop. And I'm still kind of convinced that he will see some play. But maybe not as a 4-off in many decks.
I was just gonna say, I've seen him do the thing where you play him and he just completely freezes the game, freezes the board for a couple turns, then completely takes over the game. Certainly in the games I've played, he's been at his best in red-blue. I totally thought a red-purple build is where I would go. I've suffered my worst losses to Maui in red-blue shells, where they ramp to their first Be Prepared, then they play a Maui, and that board is then totally frozen, because all you have to do is make one bad quest. You exert one thing, the Maui gets a challenge in, that you must remove that Maui or the game can't proceed for you. You basically can't quest. You quest once and the Maui gets the Be Prepared back and wipes your whole board. So you have to go wide to not lose to the Maui on board, but can't go wide. Yeah, the whole game is frozen essentially, and he's super good in that position. And that deck naturally plays a lot of good actions, and the deck they just load up on. So I still have high hopes for him in that shell, but that's a deck where the slots are at a premium. So I'm confident that this card will see some pretty serious play, but I'm not sure if I see it as a red purple. I love the interaction between him and Peter Pan.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think in red blue he's because he does more the things he does. Red blue needs that things more that red purple. I mean, freezing the board is very more important for red blue than red purple. So
yes.
Also they have more cheap actions. That's also true. Yeah, can see that.
Yeah.
Also you have also some synergy with the not the Comic-Con, the Vitalisphere.
Yes.
It's the same synergy nearly than Peter Pan, so
yeah, it's a great little interaction there.
Yeah, can take out castles for them. That's also very important.
Yeah.
So he will see play, but it's not. I think the mono Maui decks are not consistent enough to.
Because the fear was pretty high.
Yeah. You need to draw him, and then it's not consistent enough to always draw him in the right spot and then have the actions and doesn't get removed. And there's too many circumstances that makes that not a viable game plan. Yeah, but it's a powerful card in a vacuum. It will always be, probably. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about our bros. I have the short disclaimer. I play the Europa versus NA tournament, and I don't know what to play there. I still don't know, but I hope you will understand that I don't show you my brew now. You will see it next week, probably in the tournament, and I don't want to give you the deck list now because it's weird because everyone can watch it, and I don't know. I don't want all people to know exactly what I am on right now to be maybe able to see what I will play there. So let's start with your deck list. What are you right now on? What's the deck you worked on the most? What's your deck right now?
Yeah, so the deck I worked on the most by far is green purple. So for people who want to see what kind of deck you're cooking up, that can't right now, I hope I can do a slightly good Artavex impression by giving you some good green purple things to think about. I have a version of the deck that I'm really happy with, but before I get to that, I want to talk about maybe some of the, and this will be good for us to talk through together. I would like to get your thoughts as well. I think green purple is at a crossroads right now. There are multiple directions the deck can go in, and various players I've talked to are taking it in really different directions. And looking at them, it's really hard to point to any of them and say this is wrong and the other one is right. It's kind of up to the player at the moment until we get a bit more data, until we see some tournament results. So I want to pick your brain on, first of all, 3 different kinds of list, and then I'm going to run one past you that I think is what I would play today if I had to go to a set 6 tournament. So first of all, I have a version of green purple that runs 3-cost Diablo, and this is kind of inspired by the fact that we now have an extra Diablo that's playable. The Amethyst Diablo promises to make this the most consistent turn 2 shift Diablo deck we've seen, right? Because you have redundancy in your 1-drop Diablos. You don't have to draw Maleficent Spy. There's Obedient Raven as well, which has a lot of people interested in green purple Diablo, and I think that is a perfectly valid thing to be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
As an Emerald deck, Diablo is probably singularly the most powerful card we have access to. But the thing I want to talk about across all of these lists is opportunity cost. What is it costing us to play these cards, these various different things that we could slot in? And Diablo carries the greatest cost. You know, his great power does come at a great cost of having to run a bunch of actions which are kind of good, but I think the card quality that's out there, like, how much do I really want to be playing Mother Knows Best? You know what I mean? It's sort of, this is not free. If you want to put the Shift Diablo line in your deck, which is a really powerful thing to do, it's not free. It is going to eat like 15 slots of the deck, and not all of these cards are fantastic. So yeah, what do you think about the idea of a green purple Diablo build?
I mean, it's obvious to try it. Of course, we got another good Diablo 1-drop. What's playable? I mean, the synergy between the 1-cost Diablo and the shift is not very good, because when you shift it, the effect is gone. But it's still a good 1-drop. The problem is always with it's nearly everything. I agree with everything you said. The problem is, for me, it goes often into the direction where it's just a worse green steel deck for me, because you have to play a lot of actions, and the actions are worse than green steel. I would say by far worse. I mean, Stormrage on strength and some cut is all way better, and then you go maybe to the route where you play Sunchill and Prince John and some, and then it goes to then it's a discard deck, and then green steel is just better. So I think Diablo is not a green purple card in itself. I would be really surprised if it will be. The only thing that I could see, but like not in the meta game right now, is that you play the 3-cost Diablo without any synergy at all, just as a good 3-drop. But I don't see that right now because of Genie and such other cards. I don't see the upside of playing of hard casting Diablo turn 3 right now.
No, and I completely agree with you. Yeah,
and the shift line, I mean, you have to imagine what you have to do, like you said, with your deck to include it. I mean, if Diablo wouldn't exist, if he say he wouldn't exist, maybe green steel in a whole wouldn't exist, maybe, but the rest of the deck would be still probably the same. You play the Ursula, you play Prince John, you play Sudden Chill, you play Storm Rage on and such cards, and the power it would be not powerful enough probably, but you wouldn't change too much of the deck. But here you would do everything. The only real auto include is Friends on the other side. Nearly even
Yeah.
that is not an auto include anymore, but that is the best card. And yeah, I would be really surprised if Diablo Green Purple would see play, but only because Diablo Green Steel exists. And because if that
Yes.
wouldn't exist, then maybe it would have some lags, but you will always compare these two, and then Green Steel is just the better thing for the better synergy for these strategies for shifting
Yeah.
Diablo. Also, Storm Rage on is very important because I played
Yeah.
against, if you play against green yellow or something, it feels way less frightening. Because if you played in the past Sir His or now Go Tomago, you know you can trade it. And against Green Steel, you hope, please survive, because they can shift and sing Storm Rage on to remove any evasive character. And you know if Green Purple would be, I mean, you could say Mother Knows Best, yeah. Yeah, to be fair, Mother Knows Best would be, but it's not very powerful to Mother Knows Best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see it. I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you talking about these Diablo builds for too long, but I wanted to bring it up because it's something that people are, throwing into the ring
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're having a little thought about. And the last thing I'll say is that I've seen these various builds of green purple before, whether it's like a discard type build, people try to make a Prince Johnny type build work, or something like this that just a shift Diablo type build that's heavy on actions. You really, if you want to sort of take a critical look at your deck and think about whether it's the best it can be, seriously look hard at only the purple cards. What are they really bringing to the table in a build like this? They
Also,
don't
yeah,
really support the
yeah.
they don't really support the game plan that the green cards are trying to enable. Steel cards do that, and that's why green steel is an absurd force. And these builds have never broken through really. I could look at any purple card here and think, okay, I can choose a sort of steel card that is better, and we could cut some of the bad emerald songs for all the great steel ones too. So don't fall into the trap of playing bad green steel. If you want to
Also,
try and make a Diablo build work, you can, but to
I
me, it's not the most powerful thing we can do.
yeah, I also don't want to talk too much about it, but I think the power of Diablo is, and especially for the deck Green Steel, is for me not the Diablo in itself. It's the Green Steel. What does the deck is you play threat, and a lot of cards that say answer me or you lose the game. You
Yeah,
play Diablo, then you play Ursula, then you play a Beast, and if you have one time not the answer, then you lose the game. Probably, I don't know, but it's you fall behind. And because if your goal would only be answer the Diablo, the deck would be bad. But because you have to answer Diablo, then you have to answer Prince John. You can't really answer, but you have to answer the Ursula. You have to answer the Beast, the Tinkerbell. That's too much, and for many decks, that's often one threat too much, and that's the power for Diablo for me.
mm,
Because you play this in decks where you play a lot of these cards, a lot of these answer me or lose the game cards. Because in itself, sometimes he draws you two cards and then he gets removed. But then he gets removed and not your Ursula gets removed or something else, and then and then that's the power of Green Steel for me, and that's exactly that what can Purple not offer. Purple
yeah,
has no cards that say answer me or you lose the game.
no.
Yeah.
It in fact excels at the opposite. Cards that like on the surface seem to pose no threat and gain such low incremental advantage that each one of them does the same job as the next, and you just slowly eke out a victory with them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's like opposing strategies again, sort of working against each other. But yeah, I think you're completely right. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yep. So the next build of green purple that's picking up some steam. I've just called it aggro. I appreciate that maybe this doesn't look the most aggressive. You could certainly go more aggressive with a build like this, But this is your low to the ground. You are looking to establish an aggressive board really early. You kind of want to go Merfolk Banzai. Then you get to weave in all of your self-replacing one drops with other plays, so you're always using max ink every turn, and just setting up a kind of board state where your opponent's struggling to keep up. And then when they do stabilize, you are ahead on cards because a bunch of your stuff draws, and you've got tons of reach between Rose, Goat, and Go-Go. This was the first sort of build that I played this when testing set 6, and it tested really well. So yeah, eager to get your thoughts on this kind of
I think
this kind of build.
I was surprised by it because he showed it to me, and I was not too high on it because I thought should be auto lose to steal, and then I was kind of rude to you. And then
I'm used to that.
And then I tested it and I saw how powerful it is, and it is not an auto lose to steal. Genie puts a lot of work for that. Puts in a lot of work for that, and it's still a very versatile aggro deck. It's still the most versatile aggro deck probably, and I am totally convinced that this is a good deck.
Yeah.
And again, in a vacuum, there will be metas where it maybe doesn't shine too much, or it's just not a good meta call or something. But in a vacuum, it's a good deck, and it will punish a lot of decks that doesn't respect it, I think. And therefore, I totally see the deck we got. If you look at the deck list, you can't have more reach in a deck than this deck. It's amazing. If you put in all the reach cards that exist, it will lead to this. It's Go Tomago. It's the it's Go Tomago. It's the White Rose. It's Goat. I mean, how often does this deck go to 12 lore, and then it's always scary for the opponent, because then if you are on 10-12 lore, then your opponent should be really forcing to not get you that you don't get any lore from that point, because then you can be really fast at the spot that you just win. I playtested also a lot with this deck. I'm slightly on a different version, but I'm not too far away from this. So I mean, I think it's very hard to evaluate how much card draw you play and what card draw you play. That's very, very hard to figure out. I also think cards like One Drop Pegasus or something is often sometimes better than the cantrips, but then you sometimes miss them. It's really hard to figure out how you exactly build it. Also, I think the deck is it may not seem to, but it's very hard to play, I think, because every ink decision matters, and every mulligan of course too. And I think you have, at least, I don't say it's the hardest deck to pilot, but you have decisions nearly every turn, and that it's not for all decks like this. That you have in red blue, the first turns you don't have you nearly don't have decisions. You ink your Tamatoas and Maleficent Dragon, and then you play the ramp. But it's not there's not many. But this deck has really, since turn 1, you can go for turn 2 1 drops, or you can go for the 2 drop, or you have many decisions, and they matter. They really matter, the decisions. That's very appealing for me. So it's green purple. I love it. I will always love green purple, and I hope it has legs. And yeah, I don't know if I covered everything that I wanted to cover.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing, we just won't have enough time in maybe 10 of these episodes to go over the sort of minute decision making of each card. Now, just the 1-drop slot is so contested. Like you say, it's really easy to make a case for Pegasus. You could make a case for some number of the new Fred as well. In certain metagames, if we're not too steel heavy, That Fred's going to do some serious work. You could play some number of 1-drop Maleficents as well if you want to be really fast. There's cases for cutting snakes. There's cases to play snakes. It's really difficult right now, and it's not like there's too much good stuff you can't miss. You definitely can miss. You just need to stick to that mindset of green purple being something close to an 80-90 card deck and knowing what you're shaving for the metagame. A lot of the decisions you see here, like I'm playing Snake in this version still, even though it's kind of can be a little anti-tempo early in the game. Really important in this metagame is not accidentally building a deck that is like stone dead to Big Sisu and Muses and Kit. The 2 to 3 strength differential is really, really important. There are some matchups where you need your 2-drop to be a Banzai or even a Snake so that it's not getting kitted in the mirror, for example, when you're on the draw, because that could, you go first, play a 1-drop, they do the same. They play their 2-drop, you play a Go-Go, then they bounce your Go-Go with a Kit, and it's very hard to catch up from that point when they have 3 characters in play and you have 1. So you can't build in such a way where there are all these variables going on at the same time you have to think about in how you build. That's going to make precise deck building really difficult this set. But yeah, a ton to talk about in every single slot. The one thing I would say is that for me, 4 Crab and 4 Kit is like something I don't want to mess with too much. I think both of those are so important at the moment. Kit is if the metagame sticks with looking as aggressive, or I guess slightly more aggressive than last set, which is what it appears like it might be right now, that makes Kit on the play the best 3-drop you can have in most of the time. And Crab, sometimes parallel with Fox, tends to still be the very best turn 3 you could have on the draw for catching back up. So you need these game swingers. That turn 3 is the turn where you firmly establish I am the one ahead on tempo, and on the play you do it with Kit, on the draw you do it with Crab. So I don't want to give up the chances to do that. Even though you might be very, very tempted to run 4 White Roses because it gains lore, and that's very exciting, but it's not necessarily the best.
It's hard to say. It's funny because I analyze it, and every time in the past when Kit was bad, most of the time the deck was bad. It's really funny because it's in a meta where Kit is good, most of the time green purple is good. That's really funny really funny observation, because the Kit is the card for the deck. Maybe it's if you have to make a spoiler for the deck, what is this deck? It's Kit. It's Kit represents all what green purple does. So a bit for me, because and if Kit is not good in the meta, the deck is it's in a weird spot. And so Kit right now is very good. Especially it never was better, maybe because we have also a lot of Chicha and Oswald builds right now, and it's the most painful thing you can do to them to Kit a Chicha. That's so painful for them. They'll skip their turn 2 if you play Kit on turn 3. That's they won't recover from that most of the time. If they skip their turn 2 because you bounce it, that's very hard for them. White Rose is a very good card. I would also like to play 4, but we have contested slots, and I'm on 3 as well. I'm on a little bit less 1-drops, but I know why you play it. Because you want to often play 3 1-drops on first 2 turns, right? You want to play 1-1-1 most of the time, and you don't want to miss turn 1. And that still happens even with 12 1-drops. It happens. I don't know. My opponent plays Diablo and Diablo Shift with both are only 4 times in their deck, and I miss my 1-drop with 12 1-drops in my deck, and I think why? Why game? But that's it.
I have been playing 2 1-drops on turn 2 more often than I did in the past, mostly because I was a little bit fixated on that you know, if I have an option to do it, I want to stick a Merfolk on turn 1. Then turn 2, I'll play a Followers and a Diablo to set up for a Crab on my Diablo. Turn 3, I feel so happy with that. If you do manage to do that and actually get a good trade with that Diablo, you are in a fantastic spot. That even if that's on the draw, sorry, rather than on the play, you take such a tempo advantage from that it's then hard for your opponent to claw that back. So was quite fixated on those lines, but often you do want to conserve cards still. Your 1-drops are good little linkables, and you can just get one of those in and get your Banzai going or whatever it may be. But you have a lot of flexibility. You have a lot of opportunity to take different lines with a deck like this. It is no way near as linear as the word aggro suggests. This is a thought-intensive deck.
Yeah. For me personally, for Elsa also must right now. I don't know. It's so powerful and important against the genies and the beast and such cards. But yeah, I think you can argue because it's a very high cost card for the deck. I understand it. The Isma is interesting. I'm still not completely sure. I mean, I was high and low on this for it's had up and downs for me. Sometimes I think it's very, very, very good. It's a good card. The problem is that you can that you don't get immediately something that hurts sometimes after a board wipe or something. You would more like to play a rabbit. I think 4 genies are not enough for card draw, so you have to play either of those in some numbers. I think your list is pretty good. So 1 rabbit, and so you can at least don't draw multiple rabbits. That's the good thing. Then.
And I mean that's exactly the reason that the list is set up the way it is. You get stranded on a bunch of rabbits sometimes. You always want to try and keep your uninkable count as low as you can with a deck like this, but some people will prefer to play rabbits over the Yzma. Yzma is so much better on the play than on the draw. On the draw, you often play it on turn 4, looking, when you've got a hand that's maybe a couple of 1-drops or 1-drop and a 2-drop, you're ready to play everything out next turn, and ink, then draw 3. Really, really good. But in this, what feels pretty amethyst heavy metagame, and it's also got a fair bit of steel around as well, I'm playing it on turn 4 on the draw a lot and expecting it to get Elsa'd. If not Elsa'd, it gets strength. It's easy for it to draw cards, but when it's good, it is so very good. That in itself is not an endorsement of the card. Consistency is always king in our deck, and swingy cards like that are generally not things that make the cut. But with that said, I am really enjoying playing with Yzma for now, even just as you have the option to quest for 2. Often you're looking to get over the line. Rabbit never does that.
It's really hard to figure out how you play with these numbers. I think for me, if you ask me, you're in a really good spot with the list right now. There are some cards I would like to mention, and I think could be reasonable inclusions that I maybe consider to play. First card is Peter Pan. I think Peter Pan there was never a better meta for Peter Pan. Maybe these genie crazy lines, like we mentioned, their Peter Pan is exceptional for that because it's a cheaper genie than to trade their genie and surviving, and he fills this role perfectly while still dealing with Diablos. The best way a card can do, probably, if they have no cove. And again, when I playtest, I get so many people off guard with the card still, and it doesn't need to be Diablo or something. Even if they play a Go on turn 2 and quest with it, and I go with a Peter Pan over, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. It is uninkable though, so it's not a really bad turn 3 play. It's even if you don't get something, it's not a bad turn 3 play. It's an evasive quester against decks like Blue Steel or something. It's really annoying for them. And I love the card since it got printed. And I think in the meta right now it could be a reasonable addition. It's uninkable,
I can see
but
it.
our shell right now is it's okay with uninkables, but it doesn't need to. I think in this set 5 we needed to be really aware of our uninkable count because we had many reactive cards. But here it's more straightforward. We can live with a slightly higher uninkable count, I think. So that's a card I test right now.
Nice.
Other card is this card from set 1. I don't know if you remember. It's called Friends on the Other Side. No.
Oh, that. Yeah.
I still think as a card draw engine, it's more consistent than Isma, for example. It still could fit in here. It's not. We cut it for now. I also see why we cut it. But we have some really good singers for it in this deck. We have White Rose, we have Kit, we have potentially Peter Pan. In the end game, it's still a powerful draw. You will always throw it back in your mulligan, and you are often happy to draw it in the late game. Could be. I don't know what do you think about it?
It's the sort of thing we could have a conversation about probably for an hour on its own.
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting to track the evolution of Friends on the Other Side in a deck like ours. From set 1 to now, it's gone from card that you mulligan for and absolutely never ink to card that you're always happy to see it to something that you ink as a priority in a lot of matchups. And now for the first time, I'm building without it. Often it reads as like this is a card that has no relevant text at all until you like lose a law. You have to you don't have the ink to just play it on curve by paying its ink cost. You can only really do that late game when you're super out of resources, and that's really the only time you want to see it anymore. Because we're so heavy on reach, every single quest counts so much for getting us into that threshold, and there will always be spots in every single game where you just think, my god, Friends would be the absolute best top deck here. Why have I cut it? It's so bad to cut it. But there will also be times when you mulligan it away and you draw it on turn 2 and they in the dark slam an Ursula and get that card out of your hand. And it's happened so many times I almost can't count. And just the benefits of it, the power is shifting. It's so good. It is just like a free draw 2 a lot of the time. But a deck like this really just wants to quest with stuff and is rarely happy to sing. You'd almost always rather take a trade so that you can get more profitable quests in with your other smaller things, or just quest with whatever your 3-drop is. I don't know. I think people will have something to say about this debate. And I think right now, it's not that I believe it's right to cut. It's just that it's time to start having the conversation about cutting it. I'm trying without it. I've been happy.
I think it's reasonable to cut it. It's not wrong. I would fight with everyone who says it's wrong to cut it, because it's still, if we play it, it's one of our most inked cards.
Yes.
And that's maybe a sign to cut it.
Yes,
because the deck is different than in the past. In the past, we often had our goal to outvalue our opponent with Clarabelle or something, and now the best amount of card we play, the card row we play, would be if we always get to the point where we finish our opponent with the last card in our hand. That's the goal.
Yep.
That's the goal of figuring out how many card draw cards we play. And if you play too many card draw cards, then it's strictly worse because that's not our goal. It's not our goal to draw a bunch of cards. I mean, it's always powerful, but we only draw cards to put pressure on to finish the game and not to win by us having 7 cards in our hand and your opponent has no cards in our hand. That won't happen anymore. That's not possible. And therefore, it's reasonable to cut friends. And like you said, it's meaningful. I mean, it's not for free. It costs you always 1 lore when using.
Yes.
It costs you 1 lore, and therefore it's I tested it again, put it in and out. I really liked it more to put it in, but I'm not convinced about it to put it in. I nearly always hardcasted when I played it. I never sang it. Not never, but I most of the time I hardcasted because I know I will draw a lot of 1 or 2 drops, and then I have to play something out of the hardcast, and it's not
sure.
But in a vacuum, maybe people say why you don't play this card, but it's not like the professor in the Pokemon TCG. I don't know. Do you play it?
Yeah.
The professor in the, because that's really funny. A short. The professor card in the Pokemon TCG pocket. It's silly because that makes no sense for me because the card is just powerful by no reason. Every player who draws this card has an advantage by no reason. It's just an advantage by no reason. And Friends is not that. It's you have to sing it or you have to pay 3 ink. It's still a downside for the advantage. And yeah, so it's of course will be reasonable to cut it. And yeah,
totally. When you see someone's list, when other players share their lists, when the top lists start coming through for this set, when you see 4 friends on the other side, like, you're never going to look at that and say that's wrong. That card shouldn't be played anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
You're never. Nobody's ever going to be saying that. Well, maybe at some point they will. It could get power crept out completely, but for now, it's more the case that it's not an auto include, and I really want to just explore that room of the deck without it and see what that opens up, because all the slots are so, getting to a consistent 60 card deck is rough at the moment with all the great choices we've got. Yeah, I just want to see what we can do.
Yeah. Also, I got one. I think it's one last card for me. Somebody told me I couldn't give a good reason why we don't play it, but it's the Amethyst Chromicon. I couldn't really explain why we don't play it. I think because we are just not an hyper aggro deck. We are an aggro deck, but we still don't want our opponent to have 10,000 cards in their hand. I think. I don't know. What do you say?
It's a really, really good question, because I never, ever, ever want to play with that card, and I couldn't really tell you exactly why. Because in theory, we're getting a little more out of our cards. I think the issue you've got is we can't take that time off to develop that card, like before turn, I don't know, 5? Yeah, 5 maybe.
Yeah.
Like we are going. We're spending all of our ink to make our important plays up to that point, so we're playing it after. Then once we've reached that point, we're trying to close the game quickly as well. So think about the total number of cards you're going to even get from this Chromicon. Like how many turns you play. You've played it turn 5 because it's the first reasonable window to do it in this deck. How many more turns do you want the game to go on for? I know that in a Chromicon deck, you're always just fishing for reach with it, and that's fine. You're trying to close the game as quickly as possible. You're doubling up on your draw for turn to try and find that reach. That's fine. Totally get the principle of why you play it. But often we've got choices that, like for example, Rabbit and Genie draw us cards in a way that support our game plan a lot more, and give us that window to when you play a rabbit on that sort of turn and you get your one card immediately, you can see that as the one card that you would have got immediately from a Chromicon. It also opens up these bounce avenues to continue to get one card. Yes, all these things require an ink cost, but keeping yourself up on cards when you play in the manner that these tempo decks do is fine. We have different routes that keep us up on cards without drawing our opponent's cards as well. We don't play all of the super narrow reach cards like Gathering that are if you're playing a deck with Amethyst Chromicon in it, it must have Gathering, Knowledge, and Wisdom in it. Why would you ever play those cards independently of one another? And we don't want to be playing that. That's not our plan. We don't want cards that are that narrow. Flexibility and consistency and flexibility that are our two keys. Our cards always do something good. And sometimes those can be different things in different situations. We don't lock into that high reach. That's the best I can give you on an explanation for why I don't want it. But even then, I'm not convinced by my own words. So
yeah, but additionally to everything you said, it's not everything you said. It's not only everything you said. It's also obviously your opponent draws too, and it can be the Sisu then or the B prep or something that you will give them. For the end, they don't have to play their own card draw anymore. They can just play their board things or something because they know, okay, I get my card draw by my opponent now. So
that's a critical point, actually. That's a really that's the essence of it, is the fact that they get to efficiently answer everything that we do, without having to commit any resources to finding those answers, because we're finding them for them.
Yeah, and I don't want to play Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom as well because it's just a bad card in a vacuum. It's you will cry very often when you draw this, and especially in the early game. And we are not the deck for it. Yeah. Are there any? I saw you play with Big Ursula now.
Yeah, I just want to very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I just want to. We don't need to say too much about this. This is a third direction that the green purple deck can go in, that I'm just calling shifts.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
It's basically just strict upgrades to that deck as it was in set 5. I'm not going to talk about this much because we've been going a long time already, but it's basically just the deck plus some Diablos plus Go-Go's, and still playing Clarabelle, still playing Big Ursula. I think it's still a good way to go. If this is the direction you're taking green purple in, totally valid, totally get why you're doing it. I think it's still, Clarabelle is still a very good card. And it's one of the 8 slots that Clarabelle takes up in the deck are the 8 slots that are giving a lot of room for experimentation with these new tools. So you have to lose something. In most people's cases, it's Clarabelle. If you still want to play with that card, fine. It's really, really good. And so I think this is still very valid, this kind of shift-based build.
I think you need
do really well.
You need the aggressive shell. That's my feeling right now. You need the Murphox and bump size and the reach. Not necessarily the rose, but all the other reach resources to compete just in the meta. I played a really slow list and tried it to be more this mid-range thing, but it's you play so many cards that your opponent thinks, okay, I do what I want, and that's not something we can do. Yeah, the shift lines are still powerful. Why shouldn't they be powerful? Especially Ursula, I could see still be very powerful. Yeah, didn't find Spice for her yet to play it again. Did you play her again?
I did, and so that brings me round to my final of 4 lists, and this is a combined version. Really, this is a happy medium between that shift list and the more aggressive list. This is what I would play right now if I was going to a tournament, green purple wise. So it basically looks like the aggressive deck, minus a couple of things, a few things I'm not like so high on. So cut back on snakes, and then we've also
Rose,
I've
I
gone
think.
minus
Yeah.
one rose. So yeah, what we were calling the aggro list, free those 3 slots up and play Ursula Sea Witch Queen. She's still the best thing we can do against Amber Steel.
Yeah.
And the other reason that she went back in for me is after failing to really see what I wanted from Go-Go, for all the reasons we talked about before, card's still amazing, but I wasn't getting the blowouts that I wanted. In my mind, I was thinking, right, I'm going to Elsa things. I'm going to exert them. I'm going to take semi-bad trades to leave a bunch of damage on something. I'm going to Go-Go. The problem with that is it costs lots of ink to do it in the same turn. But if we develop a Shift Ursula, we then have something that the turn after we can quest for 3 with her, exert something that we want, then take a bad trade like slamming a goat into a Tamatoa and go at using that effect on her as long as we've got her ready to go. Doesn't cost us any ink, and we get to then take our good go-goes. So balance of those two things, playing in that more aggressive way, but just shaving some of the cards that I think aren't so amazing to make room for Sea Witch Queen. This is where I'm at today, and I'm really happy.
That's very cool, and it's not far away from me. Still, the Ursula, the 2-drop will still threaten the shift. Then that's always a powerful thing if she threatens the shift, especially if they see you inked one big Ursula turn 1 or something, and then they always need to be aware of it. Yeah, that looks really, really good. Again, the only thing that I'm personally not completely convinced is our card draw shell, if it's the Isma or the friends on the other side, or even something more rabbit. Still, it's a bit risky, but that's the only thing I'm not completely convinced. But I think the rest is right now a very powerful shell, and if you play that and you pilot it correct, then I think you won't be disappointed by this deck.
And I think that you're completely correct. The Yzma is the question mark here. I think it's something that I'm only sort of getting away with doing powerful stuff with it because people aren't too sure on it yet, or maybe they're not answering it in the best way because they're not used to playing against the card yet. But I can certainly see a world where we end up having to go back up on rabbits or some number of other card advantage engine. For now, I'm enjoying playing with it, but it's definitely something that gets worse because you need it to live for that turn, and I don't like that feeling. I don't like exerting all my ink to pay for this Yzma, thinking, right, okay, next turn I'm deploying 2 1-drops, inking whatever I draw, drawing 3. That's great, but it absolutely has to live or my entire game plan falls apart, because if it dies right now, I have 2 1-drops in my hand and the wheels are about to come off.
I had also some situations where I ended up inking it and playing a goat because I think that's more safe now to play just for the goat and get 1 additional lore, and because goat doesn't need to survive. But that's something we figure out. I like this deck a lot. I'm still not sure what I'm playing because we have to come to a conclusion now. I'm still not sure what I will play at the tournament. If you would try to be not biased, and you would need to say what in your first week of testing, it's hard to say, I know, is the best deck, because I want to be in the end a little bit about the decks. What would you say is the best deck for you right now? It can be green purple. You can say green purple, but
I'm gonna dodge the question and give you a really overly complex answer. So I'm gonna be fast.
No, it's
red
fine.
blue.
It's fine.
Red blue is incredibly powerful. It's not much more powerful than it was before, but it was already like busted good. So very, very playable deck. And a lot of people are shifting to be a little more aggressive. You might think, okay, they're just going to go under red blue. Red blue can still keep up. Still totally playable deck. Amber Steel, I think the upgrades it got look small, but are actually really, really impactful. Like playing that Pluto, for example, enables the deck to shift a little way in how it's built, and it can go crazy. I've had my most crushing losses to Amber Steel. So if I'm going on the biases of like what's beat me hard, then I would say Amber Steel. Green Steel, the decks are shifting downwards. They're going down the curve a little bit at the moment. So less of that kind of morph package, more
aggressive,
more aggressive openings, looking a little more like like some of the lists we've been talking about.
Calhoun,
and they're really, really good. So you have extra Diablo protection in the form of the song "I'm Still Here" that gives resist 2. It's even harder to deal with that opening if you want a high roll. Green Steel is the most powerful deck. Blue Steel, we're talking about aggressive, a slightly more aggressive looking metagame, more people playing more things lower to the ground. Well, what do you do in that situation? You go direct to Blue Steel because it absolutely mops the floor with those decks, and is kind of specifically tuned to smash them. So in that regard, I would say that Blue Steel is a fantastic metacal. But at the end of the day, Green Purple's the best deck because it feels the best to play, and the coolest people play it, and the new cards it got are the most fun. So good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck choosing.
I think in a vacuum, the problem is for me, I don't enjoy playing blue decks. I didn't enjoy them for a long time. I never enjoyed them because I don't like the ramp mechanism. Red blue feels not too good for me because just the meta. I would be very afraid of playing against a lot of decks with red blue because they're really aggressive and they don't like aggressive openings, and it could lead to some really auto losses that I wouldn't like to play. Ember Steel, I didn't play against much Ember Steel yet, but I can really see it. I don't know.
Good.
I don't know how. Yeah, it's still this high roll deck. I don't know exactly how our matchup is against it. I would like to play it even more. Maybe you got high rolled. I don't know how much you played against it.
I wouldn't say high rolled, but until you've had a chance to see that list in its entirety, like what it looks like completely, it's pretty tough to not make mistakes. So one of the easiest ways to slip up is to just accidentally leave a good trade for something into a Rapunzel, and that is something that I should be better at and still kind of prone to doing. It's really easy to slip up, and just the way that this Pluto affected the game was, I didn't think much of that card. It's so good.
Yeah, I can see that. So for me, I think right now Blue Steel could be just my feeling that Blue Steel could be the best meta call right now. I will play it, and if I think it will be very, very good that I want to play it, then I will probably pick it, but I don't want to. But I really want to be successful at the tournament, but it's very hard.
You've got a brand to defend. I don't want to see you playing any Blue Steel.
I cannot imagine it, but I will try it at least, and maybe I'm. But Blue Steel is really good against aggressive strategies and does powerful things and could be a very powerful deck. But Green Purple is also very good, and I think it's a deck like Green Steel. Green Steel is even more that deck, but it's a deck that if you don't respect it, you just lose straight away. It won't give you much chance to do your things you like, because then it runs over and doesn't. Still, it's a very aggressive deck that still isn't too afraid to go longer games. That's I
Yeah.
always liked about it. It's still that kind of deck that isn't afraid to go
Yeah, totally.
to turn 9, 10 or something. Because hyper aggro, then they have lost. But
Yeah.
this is still, you have dirtly cards, and I don't know, that's always annoying for them, and you have a lot of reach, and yeah, and that's always the reason to play it nearly for me. So um I think it's a good deck. So blue steel, blue red probably. I don't know the situation of red purple, what is in right now.
Mm.
I tested it a lot, but I didn't find the right shell for it. It either was too slow to beat red blue, or it was too fast to just don't have good enough cards against green steel. It's really hard to figure out the perfect shell there.
Yeah.
I
It
think the people will find it out. No, I'm not, and people will will have a good list, and they but it's not easy to do. You need a lot of play testing to find out the perfect red purple build, and
yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that I think the decks in itself didn't change too much. It's blue red, blue steel, amber steel, purple, red purple, green purple. Did we forget something? I don't know. No. No. I don't
If we
know.
did,
Yeah.
it can't be that important.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, friends, we would like to talk about 3 hours, but I think you would. That's way too long because it's so much to talk about, and we are wanted to finish it now. But next week will be enough time to talk for even more. And thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate it a lot, or we appreciate it a lot. And yeah, you can be surprised. Next week the tournament will start, and then we will maybe talk about the first game that I had. And yeah, I'm very excited about it, and we will
Yeah,
hear
that'd
from
be cool. We
another.
should do that.
Yeah,
We should do a
and
breakdown.
yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and bye bye, and have a good one. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Bye bye.